Yeah, I actually, I'm going to do an icebreaker question for you guys, if that's all right with you guys. All right. I've got an interesting story I could be told about you being reunited with some costumes.
For you too. Well, for me,
Yeah,
certainly.
yeah.
Yes, I've seen. Can you hear me in this thing?
Yeah.
Just recently, back in Los Angeles, I was with one that I hadn't seen in 35 years, and I was there with John Cryer. So it was an auction, so I saw one there, and then Jay Towers has one that's come to a couple of these events. So it's like seeing an old friend, and it's amazing being around a Nuclear Man costume because they're all a little unique. There's sequins in them, and by the sequins you can tell which one is of the 5 or 6 that were made. And of course there's some that are flying costumes, some for walking costumes, that type of thing. But it's always like a good friend to see it again.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I wasn't really familiar with the Flash when they came to me in 1990, but I got real familiar real fast when I got into that suit. It was designed and built by Bob Short, who Beetlejuice Oscar winner, but it wasn't very user friendly, and our hours were long, and I was sweating through it. I was the sponge, but after being in it for 20 minutes, and I had to like prop myself up on a lean board, because I couldn't sit down because I was creasing and I was sweating so much that the foam latex was crumbling. So last shot of the episode, we were one more time fighting the sun coming down up at Warner Brothers, or Southeast LA, actually, we were on location. And they yelled cut, and I ripped the wings off and threw them in the air and swore I'd never get into another superhero costume as long as I lived. And Mark has one of those wings, and executive producer Danny Wilson has another. So when they asked me to come back to The Flash 24 years later, I was delighted that they offered Henry Allen, a new version of Henry Allen, wrongfully convicted of killing his wife in front of his 10-year-old son. I knew that would carve out a special place for me and Grant in the middle of this. And then I won't go through the whole story, it's too long, but I kind of accidentally found out that I was the man in the iron mask who turns out to be the doppelganger of Barry's father and the real Jay Garrick, which was the role y'all wanted me to play to begin with. And then they said I was going to get a new suit. And I thought, oh, great, Jay Garrick's getting a new suit. And then I saw the drawings, and I'm like, wait a minute, what suit are we talking about? Because, of course, they brought my original Flash back for Elseworlds and Crisis, but it was a much more user-friendly version. No glue to the face. I could unzip it and whip the cowl forward and let the steam out in between takes. More breathable materials. So, and the Jay Garrick suit was like Christmas. I could just whip that helmet off and put it under my arm, and I was good to go. But no, who I would never have suspected, I'm glad I didn't know while we were slogging through that long 22-episode season in 1990 with live-action practical effects all night long, blowing things up. During the first Gulf War, that was interesting, blowing things up in back alleys all over Los Angeles, and 911 calls. And I'm glad I didn't know then what was coming. I might not have been able to go on. But it's turned out to be an incredible gift, and I thank you guys for all that, for sticking with me all those years.
Good questions, get good answers, guys. You see that? See how much fun that is? Oh, we see somebody coming up to the mic. I like that.
It's the Hamburglar.
Oh, yes, sir. For John, Mark Hamill.
Mark.
Was he as animated as the Trickster as we hear him being as animated as the voice of the Joker?
He's very animated. I don't know if he's the Trickster is pretty animated, But I'll tell you one thing about Mark. He is smart as a whip, and of course he's a fine actor, and he's totally committed to whatever role he does. 100%. I mean, research, And I was very stiff at the beginning, coming into a costume superhero in 1990, which was very different than coming into a costume superhero in 2014. We were at the cutting edge of a new way of telling these stories for adults. And I was a little stiff. I didn't want to say any dialogue. I didn't want to be a mascot. You understand what I'm saying? Because it had always been spoofed on television up to that point. Well, here comes Mark, no holes barred, the Trickster 100% with that crazy multicolored hair and that wacky costume. And I'm looking at him, and he's total, and I'm like, if Mark Hamill can commit 100% to what he's doing, then I need to get over my bad self and relax and have a little bit of fun with this role, which was really paid off in the final episode when he's mind controlling the Flash and I'm knocking over parking meters and catching bullets and throwing them back at the police and all this wacky stuff, you know. No, but I love Mark. He's a great colleague and friend.
So one for which one is it? What's his name? Yeah. So how like? Yeah.
Go ahead, ask.
So like, what led to you auditioning for the first role, and also how did they like film like the speed scenes? Cause like back then, like, did they have technology to just speed up footage of you running?
On the 25th anniversary, we did a red carpet event for the original Flash in Los Angeles, and we had old special effects team and new special effects team there for a Q&A afterwards. And they said that we pioneered some of the effects that they took that much further in 2024. Of course, we did not have the capability for CGI. So when I was doing a scene where I was eating pizza, I had to eat pizza and eat pizza and eat, or the cereal, I had to eat cereal. I had a bucket, you know, beside me. You know, if I was going to do card tricks, I had to do card tricks for 6 minutes. They'd speed it up and it would go by in 25 seconds. I ran and I ran and I ran and I ran, and they would undercrank the camera, and then they would speed it up and add the blur effect, and then they'd have an air cannon, which would, the old ones would deafen you. And every time I went by somebody, they had to move in slow motion so that when they speeded it up, they were normal. And they get hit with the air cannon, you know, everything would blow everywhere, and that's the way we did the effects. Old school. New school, the big fight with Savitar, you know, all through the woods and off the building, and you know what my part was? And then my digital double took over. You know, I love DD. He was my best friend.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you, John, for coming back here. For this is your second time here, and it's awesome to see you again. First question for Mark. What's your favorite memory of Christopher Reeve from the Superman movie that you filmed with him?
When I think about Chris, my mind always comes back first to the first time I saw him in that costume when he walked out of the makeup. And I'd met him before, I'd seen him as Clark Kent, and just was mesmerized by how much he was Superman, to see him approaching you. Everything about his persona was that. And then for about the 2 weeks that we filmed on the moon, he directed those scenes. So working with him, choreographing, making sure not to hurt each other, but also having two men who want to go hard at each other. There's no doubt about that both of these characters want to win this duel that we're going through. So just the collaboration, the speaking about it, the talking about it, the mindset going into it, the blocking, and then being in character with him, and then stepping out and just having a nice, gentle conversation to the side about ways we wanted to change things. So those personal moments are so wonderful for me. And then at times having lunch with him and just discussing his life and work, and we both love flying. Anything to do with airplanes, skydiving, hang gliding, it's just, we have that mutual love of flight. Mm-hmm. And so that was the wonderful thing too, because you're so much of your time is up on wires. There's times when we were outside and we were 100 feet above the ground, just dangling there above the Great Wall of China, just, oh, okay, you know. So just all those memories stay with you. I can tell you that it was 1986, 87, but it's right here. It doesn't go anywhere. It becomes such a part of your life and who you were at that time, and it comes with you. And I bring my experiences with Chris still are part of who I am. Wow. Yeah.
Okay. For John, on the set of The Flash, who was the prankster on there? And, like, were there, like, any specific pranks that you remember?
We shot the pilot, and we were all getting to know each other, right? And I think I shot the first couple or first episode, and then I went away for 3 or 4 episodes. And when I came back, I walked on set, And there's Jesse Martin teaching Grant a new tap step over here. Here comes Carlos giving Tom Cavanaugh a ride in his wheelchair, and they were going round and round and round. And there's Danielle over here, I don't know, doing something else. And I was like, they've all gone mad, you know. But they had all bonded in the 2 or 3 episodes that I had been gone. But you know, Grant was a great number one on the call sheet in that he loved to play. There are you've seen them, the videos of him doing goofy dances and doing all this hopping. But then when it was time to work, man, it was time to work. And he didn't play. He was trying to get to the truth of the matter. And it's so fun to work with him. Carlos, of course, he's very quiet, but he's hilarious. And Tom Cavanaugh, of course, and to be in a Q&A with that entire Flash cast like we were in MegaCon in February in Orlando, it's like it's the Tom and Grant show. You know, they're equipping back and forth, and yeah, it was a fun cast, but it was a dedicated cast. It was a cast that really wanted to bring out the truth in what we were doing. Oh, and I wanted to say one thing, piggybacking on you. One great gift at being very nervous about going into a superhero role that Chris Reeve unknowingly gave me was an interview in which they asked him, are you regretful or afraid that you're going into this franchise that you're going to be typecast? And he said, no. Are you sorry that you got into a franchise where now everybody sees you as Superman? He says, no. Why would I be? It's opened up so many other avenues for me to do. Broadway, other films, Somewhere in Time, you know, all the great. Yeah. Yeah. So I was like, okay. You know, it was part of my education stepping into the situation like that. I'm sorry, what was your question? Oh, I think I told you, didn't I? Okay. Or was that last month? Okay.
I got a question for John. On the 3 characters that you played on The Flash, Jay, Garrick, Henry Allen, and, you know, reprising your role, are there any particular like moments for each character that like stand out to you as your favorite, either to do or just as a scene in general?
I love the Henry Berry scenes. First of all, Grant and I hooked in on a really deep level right away because we were both after not realism but truth, you know. And he's an incredibly honest actor. People say, "What's he like?" I say, "What you see is what you get." You know, he brings a lot of truth to his character. So those first Henry Berry scenes where he's the only one that believes that I did not kill my wife in front of him at 10 years old. But everyone else believes, and this is accurate psychologically, that a child stumbling into a scene in which his father was killing his mother would have to reprocess that as a flash of light or a supernatural event, because you would not. So that's what everyone, including my friend Joe West, believed happened. So those moments, people would say, how did you work up the emotion? I said, the problem was never working up the emotion. The problem was not letting the emotion carry us away with it. So I'll always be grateful. A favorite scene was when I was in the infirmary after getting shanked, and I already know that he's the Flash, and I'm reading the newspaper, and I'm saying, oh, the Flash saved so-and-so, lucky so-and-so. Oh, the Flash saved this person, lucky that person. The Flash saved me at the last minute, under the box of knives with Mark Hamill's Trickster. And I'm going, lucky me, huh? And then he knows what I'm getting at. He says, Dad, if I was the Flash, don't you think I would tell you? And I love what Henry does here. He doesn't bust him. He doesn't pull his covers. He says, yeah, but I'll tell you one thing. If the Flash were my son, I'd want him to know that it's a dangerous world out there, that he's a hero and he's saving a lot of lives. But most of all, I would want him to know that his father is proud of him. And I thought, what great parenting, let alone wonderful scene to play. And it was later in that episode when Grant pulls the cowl back, and I swear, go look at that footage. He turns into a 12-year-old. I was like, gee, Dad, here I am. And all Henry says is, well, you always did look good in red.
Oh, and what is it? And another one for both of you. What is it? A few years back, the Flash movie with Ezra Miller, they reached all the way back and got George Clooney and all these like old DC actors that played all these different roles. If for the DCU or any future projects they decided to reach out to you and it was like, oh, we want you to reprise your role either as like the Flash or Jay Garrick or for Nuclear Man, would you be open to something like that? Or?
I want it to be a dual role, Nuclear Flash. We could both play it.
That's right. I'll take his good looks and I'll keep working out.
Oh, you got no problem in that department. Yeah.
All right, guys, this question is for both of you. All right, since we're a fan of yours, who are you a fan of? Since we fanboy over you, who would you fanboy for?
First of all, thank you so much. Well, I readily have a top 3 or 4 list. And I always name my top 3 would be classically in movies Spencer Tracy, because you could take any of his performances from the 40s and drop them into a 2025 film and it would make sense. It's so truthful, simple, and realistic. Another one was French actor Gérard Depardieu in his early French films, like The Return of Martin Guerre. And then my favorite, and I love this because he's always all the way out to the back of the theater. He never mumbles and he never plays it safe. You know, it's very easy to appear authentic if you keep everything close to the vest. Not this actor. It's full out. He runs the risk of going over the top, and that's Al Pacino. And so that's the guy that I was about to cross sidewalks with in New York when I was doing a play on Broadway, and I got so nervous I crossed to the other side of the street so I wouldn't have to decide whether I was going to say hi to him or not.
You know, for me, I look back and I look at Gregory Peck, someone like that, the stature. And Jimmy Stewart, when I think of Wonderful Life, I like the pure innocence of watching a character. And I watched an interview with Jimmy just recently that was taped years ago saying, we think of movies as the full movie, but really it's the moments. It's the moments that we take with us for the rest of our lives. If we love a film, we'll go, what was that moment when Jimmy was talking about, he's crying in that one scene. So I think about him, and as far as watching film actors work, I've always liked Clint Eastwood because he has this subtle way of delivering the performance without trying so hard, and with the eyes, and of course having Sergio Leone to help him with that. So anytime, for me, I love big performances, but I love also the ability to hold back and let the camera find you, and you don't have to audition for it. It says you've got the role. Just be in character right now, and we'll see you, we'll hear you, we'll know what you're thinking. So Clint's always been good at that type of thing. And if ever was somebody to be directed by, he would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's the note I consistently get along those lines. It's like, John, do less. 20% less. I'm like, gotcha, right.
Easier said than done. I mean, there's 100 people around you, and just like every part of you's firing, and trying to just go, breathe and be there and be still. And the cameraman's got going, we're here, Mark, and you move this much, and you're out of frame. I mean, you've got to just tone it down and be subtle and be almost be thinking it. So watching those actors work all through times I've seen films, the ones that I admire.
This is for John. You kind of touched on it on the opening question, but as a follow-up, because you talked about the Infinite Crisis episode, which really stood out to me because it was something they built over 3 shows over multiple years. It was going to be the big payoff. How did you feel when you got to read the script and realize it was also going to be like the final closure on your original Flash?
Well, they told me that summer before that I was getting a new costume and they were sending a digital crew to New York to scan me. I thought, great, Jake Garrick's getting a new costume. Cool. Yeah. What it looks like. Then I saw the sketches. Yeah. And I was like, wait a minute. What costume are we talking about here? And they said, we want to bring the 1990s flashback. I said, man, that was 28 years ago. Who in this room wants to do a 28-year challenge? And so I had to get some things straight. We weren't going to pretend time hadn't passed. Right. And I wasn't going to come in and be killed in one scene. That I was going to be part of the solution. I would die a hero's death. Those are my terms. It would not be sentimental. And it's one of the only instances in my career when I have watched something, the entire Flash part of Crisis on Arrow, and gone, okay, I wouldn't change a single thing. The writer was in the room and he was saying, nobody knew I was going to react, but come on. It had been 28 years and we didn't get closure in 1991. Right. Here it is, 2018, and they're giving me an ending to my story where they even flash back to the original Flash, and there's beautiful young Amanda Pays. And we say one line apiece, and then I know what I'm running toward as well as what I'm running away from.
And they showed you got married, and that was like...
We got married, she's dead, my Earth is destroyed, this is my sacrifice now to make. It also explained why they brought me back, because they couldn't kill Grant, and a Flash must die in Crisis. But I have to say, I wouldn't change a thing. And the review that hit it on the head said that all of us, the director, all the actors, the way it was shot, the way it was edited, they took what could have been a harrowing moment and turned it into a triumphant one. And I thought, okay, I'm more than satisfied with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This one's for Mark. When Superman 4 was being shot, another movie was being filmed by the same studio, Masters of the Universe. Both films get the blame for shutting Canon films down. Did y'all feel any pressure, backlash, or negativity because of it?
If you're speaking about when we were actually shooting the film, I knew nothing about all of that. Even them cutting some of the budget or half the budget, it was beyond me. I did sense a little bit of apathy from the director. He was upset about something. I wasn't sure why. But for me, it was actually years later before that kind of became public for people. And I agree that there was two big films that needed a lot of money. And Superman 4, with its original budget, we certainly could have put together an incredible film. And I feel like we did the best we could with what we had. And I must say, speaking for myself and anybody that I've ever worked with, doesn't matter about the money or what is going on behind the scenes. Everybody there is doing the absolute best they possibly can in every single moment they're there. No matter what's going politically is going on behind the scenes.
Yep. Yes, that's my experience. Yep. I don't want to know about all that other stuff. I didn't want to know that they were having 3 a.m. meetings with Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo back in 1990 saying, take a third off your budget or we're canceling the show. I don't want to know that, you know. And Danny and Paul went right on making the show they wanted to make because they were new in the business and they didn't know any better, you know. And we went way over budget, but we got one good season. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to know all that. That would interrupt the whole process, right? Right.
Well, if you were to allow me, I got a question, but I also got a comment. And it's for fanboys like me. I know I'm an old man, but still, I've been involved in this since I was 6 years old, different things, okay? I've talked to you both, and I was here last year. What I want to say is that you guys, your behavior, your attitude toward us is what makes this worth doing. You know, your conversation, the time you spend, the seriousness, and the way you push, the way you answer the questions. I know a lot of people look at us and go, they don't know what we do in our backgrounds, okay? Who we are, what we do. I can say without the things that I have done would make you think that I was into comic books or into those kind of shows. But your attitudes, you know, the way you spend the time, thank you for that. Thank you so much for that.
You are so welcome. It's such a joy.
My question for you, Mark, is that I imagine how I would feel when you found out you were going to be the villain in the next Superman movie. What kind of reaction did you have, and how did you prepare for that?
That is actually an incredible question because it all happened so quickly. I was actually in Denver. I was working on a play. This was all being cast. I was doing something different, and then agent came out to pay us and said, "Hey, your agent's trying to get in touch with you. Please get back to L.A." And I mean, it was boom, boom, boom. That, and then 10 days later, I'm in London, and I remember going back to, getting the part, of course, unbelievable. But I was in the hotel room, jet lagged, sitting on the edge of my bed, and it was like 2 in the morning, and what just happened? What just happened? I mean, that day I met Gene Hackman, and I met Christopher Reeve, and I've been fitted for this flying harness, and they're putting contacts in my eyes. At the end of the day, and so I find myself thinking about these things in life. Always be ready. Always be ready. You just never know when that person's going to step into your life. Your next partner, your wife, your friend, your job, your whatever, is having that openness to it all. So that part came to, and it wasn't that I felt like it should have been somebody else's. It's like it came to me because it was mine. And as soon as I had it, I started to own that character from the day I got there. So that's my thoughts about getting these roles.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's wonderful.
Hi, I have a question for John.
Yes, sir.
So, in the teaser for Elseworlds, we saw Earth 90 being destroyed by the Monitor, except for the Flash, Barry Allen, and we saw in that teaser a bunch of costumes on the ground of superheroes that were in Earth 90, but we never saw the characters. So my question for you is, whether it's someone who has already played the character or someone new, who would you cast as an Earth 90 Batman?
Oh, God. Don't put me in that situation. I'm going to turn it around. Who would you cast as an Earth 90 Batman?
I think Christian Bale, I think.
Okay. All right. Go. I'll go with that. What he said. Thanks, man.
We got time for a couple more questions. Yes, brother. Go ahead, go up to the mic. If you want to ask a question.
I can't say so much for me that was that, but maybe a bit of an issue was just my stature after the film. You're 6'4", 225, 230 pounds. There's not a lot of things you can do. You kind of look like you should be doing a superhero thing. So probably you certainly wouldn't want to hold that much unless you're trying to do something like Louis Ferrigno or Arnold or Dolph, those guys, or The Rock nowadays. But I never felt that because even if we spoke about something else, I'd say, listen, if you want me to lose 30 pounds and be 190 pounds and lean, and that's fine. So I didn't ever get that kind of feedback. Now, challenging being a tall guy would always be something because you don't fit in a scene with everybody. And I'm not exceptionally tall, but 6'4" is pretty tall.
I've been lucky at pivotal moments. I came out of the gate. Well, I did Showtime's first original movie for television. I'm a relic. It was The Dirtiest Show in Town. It was by Tom Eyen, iconic in New York theater. It was part of a Best of Off-Broadway series at the time. But my first, where I came to widespread recognition, was playing really good guy, squeaky clean, Kelly Nelson on Guiding Light. As I say, my role consisted of running around in a Speedo and singing You Needed Me. You know, everybody has to start somewhere, right? But the writer knew there was more to me. And when he went to As the World Turns, he structured this story where I started as the answer to Julianne Moore, my leading lady on As the World Turns, her hopes and dreams. And I started out as that, and I took it all the way out to stark, raving, mad psycho, and won my first Emmy. So I got to break type right away. And then I went to Santa Barbara and played a very abusive toward women character. I got my second daytime Emmy. Then I go and do The Flash as a superhero. The following year, I went to Broadway to do the Irish play, Dancing at Lunasa, which came over from the Abbey Theatre in Dublin. And it won the Tony that year for Best Play, and I was speaking in a South Walian accent and running around being this wild, whimsical character in this terrific play by Brian Friel. So I've had the opportunity, as I play a really good dad on Dawson's Creek, and then I play the worst dad you could possibly, I can't even watch it, on Teen Wolf, Psycho Dad. You know, so I specialize in superheroes and psychopaths.
What is your most favorite and least favorite stunt that you've done?
Well, there's one on Superman where I actually broke my foot, so that'd probably be the worst one, right? I had to come in above Superman, so I had to go to this trampoline, and he was in a hole. I had to come down, and I just came down hard on my right side. And actually, in filming, if you were to look for part of the scenes filmed later, almost everything I do, I'm holding my right leg up, but it looks like I'm trying to use my knee. It's just I couldn't stand on it. So and it was black. They had to cut the boot off every day, but I was able to keep going, which was fine. We just took pain relievers. Most fun is anything to do with just being as dangerous and scary and running the fire beside me and going up through a building or something like that. Whenever it gets really intense, I just love that. You just feed off the energy of it all. And everybody around that's got it going, because we're watching some of the pyrotechnics, making sure that we don't hurt anybody. Right. So that's the fun of it all.
Right. My least favorite had to have been 1990 Flash, when the Trickster, I was handcuffed, suspended by my ankles from the top of the soundstage, 35 feet in the air, and I was supposed to be unconscious. And they had a huge plexiglass, glass on four sides case filled with water. And I'm supposed to be unconscious, and the Trickster, there's Mark Hamill cranking the thing, and I go down into the water, hanging by my ankles, blindfolded. And then I had to stay there for a few minutes, and then I had to open my eyes, and then I started vibrating, and then they let go of the chain, and they got me out of the tank. Then they put my stuntman in. Who I always give him props. They put him in and they blew up the tank. And out he goes. I don't know what they thought would happen. Gallons and gallons of water over the loading dock, And so that was one of the most fun ones, was watching everybody faint when they came in for a Mirror Master trick. And the trick was he threw a mirror down, and I thought I was covered in snakes. Well, here comes the snake handler with two garbage bags full of snakes. And he starts draping these snakes. Danny Bilson had to leave the set. The hairdresser almost had a nervous breakdown. At one point I had sunglasses. A snake crawled over my head, and I could see the tongue coming in between my sunglasses. And I had to go, "Snakes!" I had no problem delivering that line.
Guys, real quick, we're going to let the guys back there at the end right now, we're going to let him stay the end. So just so y'all know, but don't go nowhere, because we're going to get a picture like we have all the rest of them, okay?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask a question of both of you. I'm going to put you on the spot. And just to let you know, I asked this question last year to the guy who played Elliot in E.T. All right, who is your favorite actress that both of you guys ever kissed?
Dude.
Yeah. And I asked Henry Thomas that, so.
Julianne Moore.
Whoa.
Joyce Heiser, Amanda Pays, Mary Margaret Hughes.
Yeah.
How on earth would I ever pick?
I like that answer.
I have been richly blessed.
Yeah. I love that answer. That's a great answer.
I know you're not talking to Nuclear Man. There was nobody kissing him. So.
This is for both y'all. If you could get cast as your dream character, whether it's a hero, villain, any universe, who would it be?
For me, it would always be something period piece, something back, a knight, Knights Templar, something like that, and very much like a sage, a teacher, almost like you if you went to Tibet and you spoke to a monk, but that kind of persona within, let's say, a knight, in time, speaking and teaching and being a guide. I would love to do that.
People always ask me, what's your favorite role? And I say the one I'm doing right now. And that's my mindset. The favorite Q&A I've ever done is the one I'm doing right now. You know what I mean? And I've had to have that. I learned very early on As the World Turns in the early 80s when I did that Douglas Cummings story, which was so brilliantly written opposite Stephen Weber, Julianne Moore, Catherine Hayes. And I was walking down the street in LA as soon as it aired, and a teacher from the Stanislavski Strasberg Institute came out. And she said, stopped me on the street. She said, we just used you as an example in class today. I was like, oh God. Example of what? And she said that the work can be done anywhere under any circumstances. And that if it's daytime TV in the death throes of One Life to Live in the Who Shot Eddie Ford story, or if it was a Tony Award-winning play on Broadway, and everything in between. No excuses, and Mark touched on this. The work is the point. And it can be done anywhere under any circumstances. So that's an energy I try to bring to whatever I'm currently doing.
This is going to be a question for both of y'all. If you had to recast a Joker, who would you cast?
Ask the question again, please.
If you had to recast a Joker, who would you cast?
You mean live action?
Live action.
Mark Hamill.
That's a fair pick. That's an entirely fair pick.
I think Christian Bale is a wild man. I mean, I tend to think about that. Daniel Day-Lewis. I don't know, somebody like that.
All right, guys, give him a round of applause.